It's noon in Mohenjo-daro, roughly 2500 BCE. The temperature sits around 45 degrees Celsius in whatever shade you can find, if any exists. There's no air conditioning, no fans, no refrigeration for another 4,000 years. You're standing on a brick street that's been baking since morning, wearing cotton, about to go to work. And you're fine, not gritting your teeth, fine, just an ordinary Tuesday. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, for 1,000 years straight. Here's something worth sitting with. When we talk about the Indus Valley, we picture mysterious seals, an undeciphered script, ruins with no named kings. We rarely think about the most boring engineering problem of the civilization: how to keep tens of thousands of people alive in one of the hottest river valleys on the planet with zero artificial cooling. Because that's the real achievement. Anyone can build a city out of fired brick given enough clay and time. Making sure people don't drop dead from heat every single summer, that's the hard part. So today, we're going through all of it. The brick, the courtyards, the wells, the cotton, the food, the water. And by the end, it gets a little humbling because this civilization solved the heat problem so cleanly that modern engineers still study its drainage systems as a model. Let's go. Here's what usually gets left out of the Indus story. We imagine people gritting their teeth through the heat, enduring it, surviving through sheer stubbornness, as if the climate were an enemy held off by willpower. That's wrong. And wrong in an interesting way. The people of the Indus Valley weren't fighting the heat. They lived in a narrow, fertile strip along the river, and over centuries turned that strip into a finely tuned system. House shape, courtyard placement, wall thickness. When you went outside, all of it got adjusted generation after generation for one problem. They didn't fight the sun. They made a deal with it, then read the fine print carefully. And to understand how, we need to start with the least glamorous topic in archaeology: sweat. You are a walking evaporation machine. Your body has exactly one serious cooling system, and it runs on water. Push water through the skin, let it evaporate, and heat leaves with it. That's the whole mechanism. Dogs pant. Elephants use their ears as radiators. Humans have millions of sweat glands and are, frankly, the best sweaters among mammals. The catch is that this system runs on a consumable. Cooling yourself costs water, and in an Indus Valley summer, it costs it fast. Someone doing hard labor outdoors can lose several liters a day, lose 2% of body weight in fluid, and cognition already starts slipping. Lose 5, and it's serious. Lose 10, and you're dying confused, because heat takes away your ability to notice something's wrong before anything else. There's a second consumable people forget about. Sweat isn't distilled water, it's salty. You can drink all the water in the world and still collapse because your sodium is gone. That's just as dangerous as dehydration, with the added insult that the water jar in your hand is still full. So the survival equation in the Indus Valley comes down to 3 things. Lower the heat load, replace the water, replace the salt. Everything else is just increasingly clever ways of doing those 3 things. Step 1. The house as the air conditioner. Start with architecture, because this is where the builders of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were genuinely sharp. The main material was fired brick made to a strikingly consistent size across the entire civilization, as if some central authority had set a building code across hundreds of kilometers, despite no evidence archaeologists have found of one. thick brick walls work the way they do everywhere in hot climates. They don't block heat, they delay it. The sun heats the wall all day, the warmth crawls inward for hours, and peak heat inside the house arrives once it's already cooling off outside. Night cold arrives inside right around midday, exactly when it's needed. The wall isn't insulation, it's a time machine for temperature, and nearly every house in Mohenjo-daro was built around an internal courtyard. The courtyard isn't decorative, it's shade at the center of the home, an air pocket every room opens onto, letting hot air rise and escape while cooler air settles below. Windows facing the street were small and rare. The main living space was tucked deep inside, away from direct sun and street dust. Step 2. Water under every house. Here's the interesting part. Archaeologists have found hundreds of private wells in Mohenjo-daro, nearly one per household, which is remarkable for the Bronze Age. That means water wasn't something you crossed the city for at the hottest hour. It was a steps away. And alongside that, another layer of cleverness, a fully covered drainage system, brick channels running along every street, carrying wastewater away from homes. In a world where most ancient cities just dumped waste in the street, this one built underground infrastructure that kept well water clean and streets, hot as they were, from becoming a source of disease. Clean water in extreme heat isn't a luxury. It's the difference between living and dying. Step 3. Cotton, not wool. Let's talk about clothing. The Indus Valley is considered one of the first places on Earth to cultivate and spin cotton, long before the rest of the ancient world caught on. That's not an accident. It's the material matching the climate perfectly. Cotton fibers breathe, absorb moisture, and pull sweat away from the skin so it can evaporate instead of trapping heat against the body the way wool does. Light, loose fabric draped over the shoulders shields skin from direct sun without blocking airflow. Bare skin under direct sun isn't freedom, it's just a faster sunburn. The famous priest-king figurine from Mohenjo-daro, with patterned cloth draped over one shoulder, shows exactly this approach. Covered, but light. Step 4. Dairy, not the river. Drinking water had its own problem. The Indus River was right there, but drinking straight from it meant risking parasites and disease, especially in the hottest months when water levels dropped and contamination concentrated. So dairy played a large role in the diet. Pottery residue shows traces of milk and likely fermented dairy drinks, something like the light, tangy fermented drinks is still popular across the region in summer. Fermentation did the same job here that beer did elsewhere. It made the liquid safer than open water, while adding calories and salts for people working hard in the sun all day. Step 5. Salt, dates, and grain on the stilts. Salt mostly took care of itself through diet. Wheat and barley bread, sesame oil, dates rich in potassium and sugar, dried fish carrying plenty of salt. None of it was designed as an electrolyte formula. It was just what grew nearby and kept well in the heat. Worth mentioning too, raised granaries, storage platforms lifted off the ground to keep grain away from moisture and rodents. Another small, unglamorous invention, without which the whole city would have gone hungry between harvests. Step 6. The sun sets the schedule, not the clock. The Indus script still hasn't been deciphered, so there are no worker diaries the way other ancient civilizations left behind. But the city layout speaks for itself. Streets were arranged so parts of them stayed shaded most of the day. Heavy labor, by the logic of every hot climate civilization of that era, likely happened in the morning and evening, with the worst hours of the day spent in courtyard shade. It's not one brilliant idea, it's the same solution nearly every hot climate civilization independently arrived at because the climate doesn't leave much choice. And now the turn this whole story has been building toward. We've been treating heat and water as a problem the whole city fought against. But that same hot river valley is exactly what let this civilization exist the way it did. Regular floods of the Indus brought fertile silt to the fields every year, much like the Nile in Egypt. And that cycle, heat in summer followed by water and harvest, fed tens of thousands of people without requiring massive irrigation empires or military conquest. And here's the strange part. This civilization left remarkably few traces of warfare across its entire existence. No fortress palaces, no depictions of armies, no kings on chariots. Instead, standardized bricks, public baths, wells, drainage in every alley. It looks like the society's energy went not into monuments and conquest, but into unglamorous everyday infrastructure that kept people alive through the heat, year after year. We tend to remember civilizations for their pyramids and palaces. This one might be best remembered for leaving behind no palace at all, but a sewage system engineers still a study today. Here's what stays with me. Somewhere under modern-day Pakistan sits a house 4,500 years old. Thick brick walls holding yesterday's cool. A courtyard catching shade and venting hot air upward. A well steps from the door, a jar of fermented dairy drink cooling for the evening. None of it needs electricity. None of it breaks in a way that can be fixed with mud and hands. It has no on switch because it has no off switch. And none of it came from one genius. It came from thousands of years of people paying close attention to what made the afternoon bearable and passing that on to their kids. For the past 100 years, we've been solving the same problem by shoving a box into one window of one house and dumping hot air straight into a treat, which makes the street hotter, which means buying a bigger box. Meanwhile, engineers today are going back to study ancient courtyards and ventilation, because it turns out a courtyard at the center of a house and an opening angled toward the wind were brilliant ideas long before anyone invented the word air conditioner. You'll get hot today too, and you'll do something about it. Move to the shade, drink something cold, sit near a fan, change into something lighter, wait for the sun to drop. Small automatic adjustments you won't even notice making. Same physiology, same species, same 2% margin before thinking starts to slip. Someone in Mohenjo-daro at noon 4,500 years ago was running the exact same calculation you run today, just with better architecture and no air conditioning. The answer was never toughness. It was brick, cotton, shade, salt, and paying attention. So could you survive a summer in Mohenjo-daro? No fridge, no fan, a courtyard instead of a bedroom, and a jar of fermented dairy drink for breakfast? Let me know in the comments. See you next time.